Man's desire to communicate goes all the way back to the dawn of time. It started with grunts and gestures, and later came crude symbols and eventually drawings. Grunts gave way to the spoken word, and simple drawings were followed by etchings, which would last longer. The earliest of these drawings and etchings are found on rock surfaces, where they have lasted for thousands of years. The development of tools and implements can also be attributed to a similar trajectory, starting with stones for bowls and grinding surfaces, as well as being used to form knives, axes, and arrowheads. Once the stone knife and axe were produced, carving on wood to make lighter pieces of art, tools, and implements began. Early examples include wooden spears from the Middle Paleolithic era. Then in 1860, 11 wooden relief carvings were found buried in the sands of Egypt. These 2-foot by 1.5-foot wooden panels were carved more than 4,000 years earlier. The earliest three-dimensional figure yet found was also in Egypt and is thought to have been carved around 2500 BC. We'll learn more about the history of wood carving and its impact on the history of Scouting America in this edition of Artifact of the Week. The history of wood carving has had its ups and downs over time. In Europe during the Dark Ages, wood carving was pretty much confined to monasteries due to the many wars and acts of barbarism taking place at the time. From about 700 AD to 900 AD, the making of images, both carvings and paintings, was strictly forbidden in some parts of Europe. Artisans would travel from monastery to monastery, carving relief carvings in stone or wood as decorative parts of each of those monasteries. After the year 1000, artists felt freer and began to be more open with their work. Most of these wood carvings were decorative in nature and were found inside structures and buildings where they were protected from the elements. Unfortunately, many of these carvings have been destroyed over the years due to neglect, or were intentionally destroyed by wars and acts of violence against churches, or when they were replaced by newer carvings. North American Indian carvings included many everyday objects such as wooden fishhooks, pipes, and totem poles. Polynesian carving can be found on boats, paddles, and other items from their cultures. The native people of South America and Africa decorated tools and their architecture with elaborate wooden carvings. The quality of wood available to an artist impacts the quality and detail of the final carved object. While some wood lends itself to high detail, other woods are better for creating rugged features due to the imperfections in the wood itself. Throughout time, wood carvings have been painted not only to help bring out the beauty, adding depth, dimension, and detail of a carving, but also to protect the artwork from damage due to prolonged exposure. This week at the Philmont Training Center, the 4th Wood Carvers Roundup was held, and I had the opportunity to speak with Gardea, a master wood carver himself, about how wood carving came to be a hobby.
As a hobby, I think it came on later, more in the 1800s, 19th century. If you look back in history, you can see that some cultures carved game pieces, whether they were dice or whether they were dolls or play figures for the children. It probably evolves with our culture, wherever you are around the world, and what tools you have available. And it's interesting here in America because we see it more as a folk art or somebody from the South, like Virginia or whatever, the hill country or Appalachia, still are noted carvers. If you go to Europe and you can see some of the churches, the carvings are just so intricate. Grinling Gibbons, and I can't remember what century was carving it, but his work, and I saw it recently in London, is just, it's three-dimensional, it's so thin and so fine. You couldn't do that today with a laser, or a 3D printer. It is, and to think that that's all handwork and whatever tools and technology they had back then is amazing. It's really evolved, and as a student of the art and craft of it, I've really enjoyed learning about it. But it was scouting that led me to carving.
After learning a bit more about the hobby of wood carving, I asked Chris to talk about how it came to be a part of the scouting program and who the key players were as wood carving progressed within scouting to where it is today.
So I know as far back, so if you look at old wood carving manuals, E.J. Tangerman was kind of the granddaddy of trying to teach people wood carving. And then he had notes in the very first wood carving merit badge booklet. So it goes back as far as E.J. Tangerman. And we still teach some of his stuff today, almost 100 years later, or really 100 years later. Some of his ideas and techniques are still in the current merit badge book. So it goes back to him. And then we move forward about 1940s. There was a gentleman who I believe is the granddaddy of like neckerchief slide carving and scout carving. His name is Ed Chobe, and he was out of Pennsylvania. And Ed, I really love his style. His style is just, it's simple, but it's perfect. It's just, every cut is with purpose, and you see what he did. His work was sold in Boys Life magazine back in the 40s, and it was like 50 cents a piece or whatever. And then there's Ben Hunt, who, if you ever read Boys Life and you saw Whittling Jim, which was the monthly slide of the month article that Boys Life used to put out. My scouting started in the early 70s, and that's how I was introduced to wood carving, through slide of the month. And so I waited every month, and I had an older brother who's a scout and a younger brother. We waited for that. I watched my older brother carve that first slide. I still have that first slide. It was a canteen from 1974. And yeah, I just was hooked with carving ever since. Then after Ben Hunt, I would say kind of two gentlemen took over from there. I would say would be Jeff Springer. Jeff Springer, Mike is his son, who is our current wood carving guy. But Jeff, I believe out of Kansas, and he helped write the latest version of the current wood carving merit badge. He headed up, started in the late, or I'd say early 80s or late 70s, heading up the wood carving merit badge booth at jamborees. And that's years later, that's how I got involved. I was carving on my own, teaching the merit badge in Los Angeles Council for years, since the 80s. And then I heard about these guys at Jamboree, volunteered, and then got connected with them. And so it was a broad network. So after Jeff Springer, there's also Bob Rittmeyer. Bob Rittmeyer is out of Pennsylvania. And if you ever carved anything at summer camp, you've probably carved one of Bob's blanks. So it's a basswood piece. He would stamp them out, cut them out, and they were sold out to summer camps. In the wood carving world now, everybody I think has heard of Bill Birch. He had a pretty significant style or characteristics, and he made, I want to say it was in the 50 to 70,000 carved bolos. And he did do slides early in the 70s, and so if you find one of his slides in the 70s, are usually from his later work is from Utah, his early work is from Washington. And they have a little tiny ring on the back, so those are actually more rare, his slides rather than his bolos. But again, a very distinctive style. He only used one pocket knife, and a very interesting. I sat with him. I was fortunate to sit with Bill Birch, 2005 and 2010 Jamboree, and sit and carve with him and talk with him, and learn some scouting history about wood carving. And then his, let's say his student, or now has taken his place, after his passing, is Gary Dollar. And Gary Dollar is out of Utah. He does very similar style bolos, again with a Congress pocket knife that has modified blades to really do what they're doing. And again, if you're a student of wood carving, you can look at the slide and you can see the economy of cuts and what they're doing, and they know what they're doing. And there's no hesitation, there's no chatter. That's a face, and it's gorgeous.
Chris told me where a wood carver was from could also impact the wood they chose to carve.
And that's the first question everybody asks. You know, what type of wood is that, and how long does it take you to do that? And usually basswood, which is from northeastern America. It's a North American hardwood. Minnesota has the best basswood. That's what Bob Rittmeyer used. That's what Ed Chobe used. Sometimes Ed used sugar pine and mahogany. The gentleman from Utah, Bill Birch, Guy Nilsson, Gary Dollar, they use aspen, which is a very nice wood to carve. And then if you go to scouting history and in the kits they used to sell, I know in the 70s it was a big deal. Parents would give me $10, last us a week at summer camp, right? And we would buy the Woody's slides, and National BSA issued those, and they were usually out of sugar pine. And then as years progressed all the way into the mid-'80s, they kept kind of changing things. And they went to basswood, but it was more flat relief carving.
Several times during our interview, Chris would mention Slide of the Month. So I asked him to tell us a little bit about this feature that appeared in Boys Life magazine for many years and how it impacted him as a wood carver.
So I do know that the first article started in 1938, and they went to about 84, 88. And again, it was Ben Hunt who kind of got those in there, and got the basic carving craft knife from the Boy Scouts. I did cut myself. I did make a lot of pointy sticks until I got into Slide of the Month. And then each month it was a small little article, and it said, this is the type of wood you need, do this step by step. There was one picture, and you learned to carve some type of figure. It had a big influence across the country in scouting after, and I don't know exactly when, but Ben Hunt passed. But I do know that Jeff Springer took that over, and he started in the 80s. He started submitting articles for Slide of the Month.
Since Chris was here and we had many of the hand-carved neckerchief slides in the collection of the National Scouting Museum on display for the participants of the Wood Carvers Roundup, I asked him to talk us through some of the more interesting ones.
This box of neckerchief slides, they're hand-carved. They came out of the international collection, and that's in storage here at the museum. I do not know the carver, but these are some of the finest examples of relief carving. This carver is just so talented. What this carver did was they carved each one of the international scouting logos for each country. And this is just part of the collection. But again, and this is a significantly hard wood because it takes fine detail so well. I mean, I would struggle to do this myself with modern tools today. So on this table, we have quite a few Slide of the Month. This is a classic Ben Hunt inspired Slide of the Month. It's the tooth with the roots, and then that would be your neckerchief right there, your neckerchief slide. This is the little monkey, but this goes back to some cultures, and some people used to carve peach pits. And this is a classic peach pit monkey design, but it was also turned Slide of the Month, so somebody carved this out of wood. This is a beautiful piece right here, hand carved. Looks like a piece of wood. You even have the whipping on the ends of the rope. This was a Slide of the Month as well. This head shouldn't bobble when you do it. It's pretty cool. I do know that this is a Slide of the Month. Very nice, Northwest Coast. So here's some more. These are classic Slide of the Month here. Again, Ben Hunt design. We don't know exactly who carved these. These came into the museum in the 2011 era. But this, when we had our students see this guy, everybody recognized it immediately because this is old, probably from the, I want to say 60s to 70s, but this little cheese, mouse and cheese. I've seen it before too, where the head moved a little bit like that donkey. But what a great slide, right? This feet hanging out the tent, another classic Slide of the Month. Just some really good things here. This eagle is a nice classic Slide of the Month. And I remember seeing these hiking boots. Another one, another inspired Ben Hunt. So again, this is another Slide of the Month, Ben Hunt. You could see somebody either wrote in there. This is probably pre-laser printer days, right? They probably hand wrote that and glued it on there. But again, just a really nice, delicate job. Look at the detail there. This is a nice profile of Woodland Jim Slide of the Month slide. Somebody did a really good job on these. These are classic. This is the Paul Bunyan. So Ben Hunt did this and Slide of the Month, but I believe also Ed Chovy had a design like this as well. This knight is classic Slide of the Month. The Black Knight. Again, Carver did a really good job on this. But look at this windmill. Again, this is another Slide of the Month. It works. You know, you can imagine, hey guys, look at what I made. So again, we get into the carving. Look at, they even did the individual shingles on that windmill house. And then very, very detailed. But again, you know what? Some scout made this with a lot of pride. And we get to see them today. What a great job. I mean, they carved all the cannon piece here. They've fabricated little brackets to hold the cannon on there so it pivots up and down. You've got the wheels on it. Again, this is a classic. They put US Navy or USN on there, but this is a classic slide of the month right here. So this water buffalo is very classic from the Scouts of the Philippines. They come in all different colors, all different types of wood, but they will almost all look exactly like this. And look at that. Look at the economy of cuts here as a carver. There's a couple chip cuts there, just the eyes. They shaped this, and then just some lines there. I mean, granted, that was a general outline, but the economy of cuts tells you that's a water buffalo from the Philippines.
After we looked at the slides from the collection, Chris shared several items that he had brought with him that not only showcased many of the carvers he spoke of, but also pointed to the future of wood carving within the Scouting program.
Down here is what we have are called step boards. These were made by Bob Rittmeyer. These step boards show you this is the chunk of wood you got. It's already cut out in this shape, and we'll walk you through step by step on how to carve this this eagle, this little bear, and some of these were actually published in Boy's Life. So it's kind of neat to see these. This is back from 1992. We get into the future of carving. I mentioned all those people that like Ben Hunt and Rittmeyer and Jeff Springer and stuff. Mike Springer, who is Jeff's son, and his wife Tammy, they have taken over and kept the legacy going of Scouting wood carving. And they run the Jamboree Wood Carvers. This gentleman is from Utah. Guy Nelson carves these, and he's carved thousands. But again, he was taught by Gary Dollar and Bill Birch. So you can see here's some Gary Dollar, and then these are a couple Bill Birch bolos. And you can see the influence that they had. And look at, there's Bill Birch. This is number 41,653. This is Mark Wagner. He carves beautiful Northwest Coast style bolos and neckerchief slides. These two bolos are, again, that is Matt Swan out of Las Vegas, and you can see who he might have been influenced by, right? This guy just wows me. John Thaler out of Texas. His work just blows me away. You have to hold this in your hand to see it. The detail on this skull all the way around, that's his thing. He's an engineer, he's meticulous. All the way around, look at the teeth. There's a texture to the teeth. I mean, there's texture on the antler, the bone, just beautiful detail. But John Thaler does a tremendous job. Again, these are the future. They're current right now carvers and Scouting. They're the future. This is some of my work I've done over the years.
Before I let Chris go, I asked him which of these titans of wood carving were his greatest influences.
I would say Ed Chobe, who I never met, but as a student of Scout carving, a collector, and then a teacher, I said his style is simple but effective. Yeah, I really appreciate his artwork. It's well done. And then again, being able to watch Bill Birch and Gary Dollar do what they do, it's helped me.
Like many hobbies, wood carving is not as popular as it once was, and Chris and others attending the roundup are working hard to keep it alive, not only in the general population, but also in our Scouting community. So I asked Chris what advice he would give to a Scout or Scouter that might be interested in giving wood carving a try.
So I'd say first, don't spend a lot of money. You don't have to buy everything. You can do a lot with some basic tools. But I would say find a mentor, take a class, take a class from your merit badge counselor, or find a wood carving resource in your district or your troop, even your council.
I'd like to thank Chris for sharing his time and his passion for wood carving with us this week as we learn more about the history of Scouting America through the collection of the National Scouting Museum and Artifact of the Week.